The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Nick Fantasy. They're coming to customers. Play just $5. Get $100 bonus funds. Use promo code SGPN. And welcome, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast here on the Sports Game Podcast Network. Currently Thursday afternoon, December 16th, around 3:15 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Rosso with Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. I'd argue that it's the first episode of a new season. Could, in theory, be the last tournament of the previous season. Either way, the layoff is over. The off-season is over, and we're back to continue the Tennis Gambling Podcast as we have the Next Gen Finals taking place in Jeddah. So it's going to be the youngsters, the best of the best out of the youngsters who are showing up, trying to win a title. But either way, it's a weird format. I'll mention that in a second. Either way, though, here to break down the Next Gen Finals, going through the groups and going through the outright picks to win the entire event. Before we get into any of the actual breakdown, though, of the event, a reminder that you can also support the show by subscribing on YouTube. Find the podcast on Spotify and Apple as well for audio format only. Leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. Plus, a reminder to check out the merch store. A lot of great tennis options. We have sweatshirts, we have t-shirts, we have mugs. High quality, very affordable. Think you'll like the options that we have there on the SGPN merch store. Plus, a reminder, if you want free picks and podcasts from the network in one easy location, check out the SGPN app, free to download in the App Store. And a reminder, once again, it is completely free to find all of our picks and podcasts in one easy location. So, before we get into the actual breakdown of the ATP Finals, have to recap what happened in the Next Gen Finals title match. We did an episode on that about a month ago, and as a recap, we swept. We won everything in the actual match. Sinner beat Alcaraz again, and we had a Sinner team total over 12.5 at -140 as the lock never in doubt. He ended up winning the first set in a tiebreak, and then he ended up winning the second set 7-5, but it was in great shape once he won the first set with a 7 attached to it, and that definitely was a sweat-free winner there. For the dog, nice and easy as well. We added the over half a tiebreak in the match at +105. Never in doubt, you had no breaks in the entire first set, and eventually you got some chaos in the second set. But either way, for the actual lock and dog, we cashed both them pretty much automatically once the first set ended. But either way, nice win for the dog as there were no breaks in the first set. Exactly what we wanted, and we ended up getting a nice sweep for the lock and dog picks. Now, for the outright, we had Sinner and Alcaraz, because of course we did, but Sinner was the de facto favorite at -140, which we had second straight season. He's won this event, the ATP Finals, in, once again, Turin, without dropping a set. So Sinner in this environment is borderline unbeatable. Alcaraz had him on the ropes in the second set, but let him off the hook, and Sinner did win in straight sets again. He's been dominant at this event. We'll keep taking him every time. And either way, Sinner did a nice job by winning another title and winning a pretty large amount of prize money on top of that. But either way, nice win for us. Won the lock and dog picks. Also won the outright, which was guaranteed because we had Sinner and Alcaraz, so that was going to be an auto win no matter what. But either way, nice overall episode and sweep for us. Now for the match, which I'm sure a lot of you forgot about because it was a month ago, but it was very, very close. The first set, you saw 0 breaks of serve. Sinner had to fight off 1 break point and then eventually did win the tie break. And then the second set was a lot more chaotic as Alcaraz was up a break in the middle of the second set. Then he gave it back. He actually broke immediately to start the second set. Gave it back in the 3-2 service game, then failed to convert a break point in the immediate 3-3 return game after that. And then Sinner eventually broke to win the match and to win the second set 7-5. But a very fun matchup, as these head-to-heads usually are, between Sinner and Alcaraz, and Sinner got the job done in front of the home country fans. And once again, we ended up sweeping everything for the actual match. Now, that's basically it for the actual recap there. It was fun. Sinner won, and we won in the process. Now, there wasn't really much, I'd say, drama going on during the month off. Some small storylines here or there. I'd say not much worth talking about. However, I do think there is one piece of news that I want to mention, which is a changing of an ATP rule. The ATP decided to add in a new anti-heat rule in 2 out of 3 set matches, which involves adding a 10-minute break in the middle of certain matches if the temperature gets too hot. Now, according to the initial rule, 90 degrees Fahrenheit will be the official cutoff, but there will be a 10-minute break, a cool-off period, so to speak, where players can change, they can shower, they can hydrate, use ice, whatever they want to use. But the point is, they can take a break if there is some serious heat. And I think that's definitely a good idea. We saw issues in Shanghai in October with the humidity attached to it where players were dropping like flies, a lot of retirements, and it does seem like this rule is in place to try to limit the number of heat-related retirements overseas when you get an insane amount of heat, or if you're playing in, for example, Atlanta, or you're playing in Cincinnati during the summer, which can get very hot as well. It does make sense. Now, a reminder, this is only an added rule for 2 out of 3 set matches, but I do think it's a good idea. They do it in soccer. Conceptually, it's really simple. Would you be willing to sacrifice 10 minutes of action to ensure a higher quality match throughout? And I think the answer is yes. I think every tennis fan would do that. It's not that big of a deal. 10 minutes, you can take a break yourself, get a drink. You can even take a shower if you want to. Point is, though, I do think it's a good idea. The fact is, we've seen some retirement, especially towards the end of the year when it's summer in Asia, etc., because the conditions can be very tough to play through. And I do like the actual idea. 10 minutes, not an insane amount of time, but at the same point, it's enough time for players to get some extra hydration and to cool down if needed. So wanted to mention that rule, which will be in place, I believe, immediately. But I do like the idea. Once again, it's not going to impact every single match. It will only impact matches that are 90 plus degrees Fahrenheit. But I like the idea. I think it makes sense if you want to promote a higher quality product. Seeing players play extremely compromised or withdraw or retire outright definitely is not what you want to see, especially for actual people that are paying to see the matches. So I like the idea, think it makes sense. And if it ends up resulting in fewer retirements, I do think it's a smart idea. So either way, once again, that was the main piece of news. The ATP did add a new rule in place to try to make playing conditions a bit more, I'd say, manageable for players, and I co-sign it. I think it makes sense. And the one drawback might be 10 minutes being a long time. It's fine. I'd rather see 10 minutes of nothing followed by an hour and a half of good tennis than seeing a guy roll over and die 6-1 in the final set because he can't move. So once again, it's a small trade-off, which I think will have a good overall impact on the sport. I like it. Wanted to mention it, though, because I feel like nobody actually talked about it in terms of news outlets, but I wanted to mention it. So there we go. Anyway, before we get into the actual breakdown of the Next Gen Finals, a reminder that we are brought to you by our sponsor, which is Kalshi. So if you want to check out real money prediction market, legal in every single state, check out Kalshi. You can trade tons of markets in sports, including the NFL, college football, college basketball, NBA, NHL, and more. Plus, you can also trade props like first touchdowns. They have a bunch of other options besides sports, including politics, entertainment, and even weather. You can also check out the new offer that we have with Kalshi. New customers get $20 when they sign up with the code SGPN. That's Kalshi, Kalshi, promo code SGPN, once again for a free $20. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. So you want to check out Underdog Pick'em entries, chance to win 5,000 times your entry, pick higher or lower on player stats. Mix and match your sports with the NFL, with the NBA, NHL, tennis, UFC. A lot of options, but a reminder, you can still mix and match all of them for your Pick'em entries. And a reminder, they have an offer for customers. Play just $5, get $100 bonus funds. Use the promo code SGPN at sign up. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the recap of the final in the ATP Finals. Time to move on into the actual preview of the upcoming event, the Next Gen Finals, starting on Wednesday morning. So, starting off with the actual, I'd say, reminder of the rules for this event. It is a very weird format. It is the only event that uses this format. Personally, I hate it, but it's pretty common. It's known to become the signature look of this event. So this is going to be a 3 out of 5 set match, which sounds fun. So once again, should be a bit long. However, instead of first to 6 in each set, it is first to 4. So a tiebreaker, of course, in most matches is 6-6. Obvious stuff. However, in the Next Gen Finals, a tiebreak is 3-3. It's first to 4 in each set, win by 2, but 3-3 results in a tiebreak. So each set actually does not take that long. And if you end up getting a couple of good servers against each other, the sets can take like 20 minutes. Like, it's definitely a weird format. But either way, it is 3 out of 5 sets, but each set is first to 4, win by 2, but the tiebreak is 3-3. So it results in a pretty weird format where you end up getting a pretty, I'd say, unique scoreline in every single match, and we'll see how it unfolds this year. Do I like the format? No. I understand you want a unique look involving the teenagers. You want to get them their own, I'd say, stage to shine. But I do think if you wanted to compare, for example, would you rather see a 3 out of 5 setter with first to 4 in each set, or a regular 2 out of 3 set match with the regular format of tiebreaker being 6-6? I would pick the second option. I think first to 4 in a set is relatively dumb, but you know what? It's what they want to go for, and that's what they're going to stick with. So I'm not a big fan of it, but I'm accustomed to it, and I feel like most people feel the same way. Now, once again, the next gen component means that it's mostly teenagers in this event. You're trying to give the young guys a chance to showcase their skills, and that's why the recent winners consist of a bunch of young players. So keep that in mind. You're not going to have any of the star players like Sinner Alcaraz here. This is purely a next-gen, I don't want to say exhibition tournament, but it's basically a showcase is the word I'll use for some guys you might not have heard of, some youngsters who may have had a moment or two on the ATP Tour, but mainly challenger guys who can showcase themselves being the next potential crop of star players. For example, last year, Fonseca beat Tien in the final. We saw both guys have great seasons. We saw Tien win a title. Fonseca won a couple as well. So that's a perfect example of that. You might get some guys who are young, have not officially had their moment on the ATP Tour, but they're coming. And you can tell that they are going to be really good. Fonseca versus Tien in the final last year was a good indication that both guys were going to do big things in the future. Now, the year before that, Medjedovic beat Fies in what was a very competitive match there. So Nakashima beat Lehechka in, I believe it was straight sets the year before that, and Alcaraz beat Korda the year before that. So once again, you end up seeing a bunch of pretty interesting, I'd say, no-name guys to casuals. If you experiment in the Challenger Tour, or if you've been betting on maybe first round matches in these random 250s, you might have seen some of these guys before. But either way, point is, there's a general unwritten rule. If you win the event in the past, you drop out. You don't enter again. So, for example, Fonseca is still young enough to play in this event. He obviously won last year. He dropped out. So, if you win the event in years past, you rarely, if ever, return to the event. And Fonseca, for example, is not participating. He opted out. Now, you ended up seeing Mensik, who was supposed to be here. However, he got injured at the end of last year. He dropped out as well. So you would have seen a little bit more recognizable faces, but unfortunately, 2 guys dropped out with Fonseca and with Mensik. So some other guys filled in to take their place. Now, for the actual format, same thing as the ATP Finals. You have the group stage round robin, you have the green group, and you have the red group. So getting into the actual groups here, starting off with the first group. So for this one, you have Tien as the green group favorite at minus 225. You have Landalucci at around 750. You have Bodkov at around 750 as well. And I see Joder at around 4-1. Now, Tien, we know, is right now the best player in the entire field. He has the most accomplished resume of everybody in this tournament field. So not exactly that surprising, because a lot of the guys that I mentioned, if you have not followed challengers, you probably never heard of, or have heard of maybe in passing. Tien, though, made a couple of ATP finals last year. He won a title. He's a very solid player. We saw him have a good run in the Aussie Open last year, beat Medvedev. The point is, he is a very solid player. He's worthy of being a favorite. And a reminder, since I said before, the champion tends to not return here. He was the runner-up here, so he has some unfinished business. His experience on the courts here, but he did not win, so he's trying to finish what he could not finish last year and win himself another trophy. So Tien is the decent-sized favorite here. Joder's relatively unknown, solid young Spanish player, very tall. I believe he's 19 years old, 6'2". So we'll see how he ends up looking, but his court coverage can give some other guys problems. Wandalucci, another Spanish guy, he's been talked about for a while. To be honest, I don't see the same upside that other people have. I think he's a lot more volatile than people give him credit for. I think he's got talent, but I question his mental toughness, especially against guys like Tien, who are going to rally him to death. I think Wandalucci has some skills, but I just question if he's going to, I'd say, keep his composure against some solid ralliers, and I'm skeptical over the course of the entire event. And then you have Bodkov, who is, once again, a guy who's got some talent. I don't think of him as being a great hardcourt player by any means, but either way, the point is he is a solid player. He's from Norway, potentially going to be a threat. We'll see what happens. But for the hardcourt records, he was good on hardcourt last year, but I do think with the talent here against Tien, etc., he might be a little bit above his skis. So we'll see what happens, but I think he's a good player, but I do think he's still a little bit raw, and we'll see if he's able to maybe piece some things together in what could be a Cinderella run. Now, for the actual green group, though, it's an expensive price. I understand it, but I think Tien makes a lot of sense. Minus 225. Said before, experience does help. Runner-up last year in the same venue, and the fact is Tien is one of the only guys in the entire field who have been here before, because a lot of the names that I mentioned you're not recognizing. He's not the only guy in the event that has been here before, but in this group, he is. So, yes, I understand there is some talent. You could argue some guys that maybe could sneak up and beat Tien, like Joder, Wandalucci, and Bodkov. They've still never been here before, so I do question if nerves will play a factor, adjusting to the court speeds. Tien should be fine. Played here last year, made a good run here last year, and the only guy he lost to, I believe, was the eventual champion in Fonseca, who turned out to be really, really good. So, no shame in that. Think Tien will look sharp. Give me Tien at minus 225. But since Tien is still not a great server, I do think there is some room, if a guy can serve well, to maybe win the group. So I'm going to go with Joder at around 4-1. I like his game. He's still relatively unknown, but a pretty good server. Being 6'2 helps. Think his game can frustrate the opposition, and I do think if his serve is on, he might be able to win enough free points against Tien with the serve to find a way to win a marathon. So I think it's possible Tien wins the event without going undefeated. I think he could, in theory, lose a group stage match. Not saying he's going to, but it's possible. So I'll pick another guy because I'll leave the door open. Give me Joder at 4-1 as my longer shot, who I think can maybe surprise some people and maybe find a way to win the group. We'll see what happens. Moving on, though, to the red group. Now, for this one, you have Prismic, who is the favorite at around 2-1. I see Blocks at around 2-1 as well. Basivaretti as the lone American in the field at 225. And you have Engel at 550. Engel is the talented young German. He's only here because Mensik dropped out. He was the replacement, so keep that in mind. Still very raw, but has a lot of firepower. We'll see how he does. Now, Prismic might ring a bell to a couple of people because he made a very good run there in his home country of Croatia, where he lost that marathon match in Umag to Darderi, who eventually won the title, but he won the first set, turned into an epic match, and Darderi did outlast him as he won in 3. But Prismic we have seen before. He has a lot of talent, and I do question if he'll be able to showcase maybe a more complete, I'd say, package to his skill set. I'd say moving forward, we've seen the upside. We've also seen the streaky play. The serve with the percentages can be underwhelming, but when he hits his first serves, he can be dangerous, but the percentage is still a bit too low. We'll see if he improved on it, but Prismic, I'd say, is a more recognizable guy for most tennis, I'd say, casuals out there, because we've seen him play a couple of events in the ATP, and we've seen his skill set definitely jump off the page as being a solid, young, potential future face of Croatian tennis. Now, Basivaretti is a solid American player We saw him face off against Djokovic in the Australian Open a year or two ago. Won a set, actually. Did not have a great season last year after having a pretty good year 2 years ago. But once again, he has been here before. He's the other guy in the field that has played in this event before. So you could argue that court familiarity might help him out. But he is a guy whose serve can be up and down, solid overall rallier. So he will try to push opponents into deep waters, which might work out in the 3 out of 5 set format. Now, Blocks is a pretty talented Belgian player who we saw at the end of last year, who made a pretty decent run, actually, as he ended up losing, I believe it was in the semis, to Felix, where he made a respectable run, ended up losing, but either way, at least I think I'm thinking of the right guy. Am I thinking of the right guy? I think I am. But either way, point is Blocks is a solid overall player, and I do think his firepower kind of speaks for itself. Now, we ended up seeing him win a title, actually, in the Challenger circuit in Bratislava towards the beginning of November. So, talented overall. Once again, hardcore player. He has some firepower, so if you want to argue about the fast-paced courts, his serve can do some damage here, and that can be a decent, I'd say, path for him to making the semis and beyond for the event. Angle, I don't think he has a chance, to be honest. I think he's too raw. I think that he's good, but I do think he's still very young. He got as a last-second fill in a spot in the actual tournament. You could argue he's got nothing to lose because he was not supposed to be here. Maybe that makes him dangerous, but watching him play, the rally tolerance and shot selection are just not great enough for me. So I'm going to skip on Angle. He maybe can win a match. I doubt it. I think he's going to lose, but either way, I'm not going to take him as the longest shot here at around 550, which leaves 3 people. You have Prismic, you have Basaveretti, and you have Blocks. Now, for the first choice, I am going to go Prismic at 2-1. I know that he's not the same exact player as Fonseca, but we saw last year young guys with a lot of firepower can do a lot of damage on the courts here, and I do think that Prismic has enough court coverage and enough firepower to really do some damage, and I do think 2-1 is a good price for a guy with upside that we've seen before. It's not something that we are all theorizing about. We have seen Prismic play well before. Think he'll look sharp. I don't mind him there at 2-1. Now the other question is, who am I going to go with between Basaveretti and Blocks? I chose Blocks at around 2-1. I think that Blocks is a pretty solid overall player. I know that he's mostly a challenger guy, but I do think his overall firepower can do some damage here, and I do think that his serve is better than Basaveretti's. I really just think Basaveretti's serve is, I don't want to use the word a liability, but it feels like it's more of a weakness than a strength. So I do think it's going to be the main difference for me. I think Blocks' serve will win him enough points to potentially win the actual group. And once again, if you're looking at what is a tiebreak at 3-3, a good serve can go a long way. Basaveretti, I think his serve is a little bit too vulnerable, where I think he will end up facing break points, and you might not leave yourself enough chances to break back with the actual short script of these sets being 1st to 4. So for that reason, I am going to go with the Belgian instead. I am going to go with Blocks. I think Blocks has some value. I think his serve is pretty good, and I think that's enough to do some damage here on the courts. So I am going to skip Basaveretti, but I am going to go with relative chalk. For the group stage, once again, green group, I am going to go with Tien at -25, and I am going to go with Joder at 4-1. For the red group, I'm going to go with Prismic at 2-1, and I'm going to go with Blocks at 2-1 as well. Moving on to the outright picks that we have to win the entire event. So starting off with the odds, you have Tien as the favorite, at a +110. Prismic at around 650. Basaveretti is 7-1. Joder is 7-1 as well. Blocks at 7-1. You have Bodkov at 10-1. Engel at 10-1, and Landalucci at 10-1. So Tien, once again, defending runner-up, lost to Fonseca, who's really good. I think we'd agree Fonseca, who also dropped out of this event, would have been a pretty decent favorite if he stayed in the event. He would have been a minus price. So losing to Fonseca in the event last year. No shame in that. Tien gave it an effort. He just didn't get there because he just couldn't match the firepower that Fonseca had. But I like the actual draw. A pretty weak overall field. Tien, I think, is the best player here. I think plus 110 makes sense. He should make it out of his group, whether he wins or loses the group. He should finish first or second. Good enough for me, but he's been here before. He's won a title before on the ATP Tour. I think he's by far, head and shoulders, the best player in the field. I'll take him at plus 110. Now, the question is, who can actually beat him in the entire event? I don't see many guys that I think can, in theory, beat Tien. You could argue maybe Joder, one of these relative unknown guys, can find the right game plan in a given match and find a way to upset him. But I'm going to go chalky here. If you look at this, at the history of the event, it has been on a bit of the chalkier side. Fonseca was the favorite last year. He won once again. You're looking at Alcaraz, who's won before. You're reading off the names, and you have seen the favorite tend to win in this event. I'll stick with that game plan. Give me Tien at plus 110. But I will also throw in Prismic at 650. I think his defensive resources can frustrate Tien. I think if he played against Tien, it would be a very long match. I can see it being close. But I think 650 for a player with the skill set that Prismic possesses has value. I'll take him there at 650. I think that Prismic's quarter or group is in theory tougher than Tien. Based on odds, you have him at the same odds as Basaveretti and blocks. So it's more realistic that Prismic would miss the semis than Tien. But I do think Prismic with a skill set should make the semis. And I do think if he ends up getting in to the semis, who knows? I think his skill set's pretty solid. I think he's got firepower. He has defense. I think he can find a way to surprise some people. I think that 650 is a pretty good price. I'll swing for it. I'll go for Prismic at 650 as my long shot there. I see Matt saying that Fonseca was not the favorite last year. I'm pretty sure he was. I want to quickly look up the field last year, but I'm pretty sure Fonseca was the favorite because I'm thinking of who else was actually in the competition. And I have to remember who was there last year. I'm trying to think. Fees and Mensik were both in there. So you could argue that maybe one of them was favored. I don't think Mensik was. I think Fees in theory might have been, and Fonseca might have been the second favorite. I mean, the second group was really not great at all. You had Mickelson, you had Van Asch, you had Basaveretti, and you had Shang. Shang was constantly injured, so I don't see him being a guy that was one of the favorites. So Fonseca might have been. He might have been the second favorite behind Fees. I think that sounds more correct, so maybe I take it back. Point is, though, Fees, I think, was the favorite, and Fonseca was the second favorite. But you tend to not see a serious long shot win the whole thing. It's usually one of the top two guys wins the event. That's the point I'm trying to make. Matt, I think you're right, though. I think Fees might have been the favorite last year, but I'm like 90% sure Fonseca was a top two favorite, and he ended up winning. So there we go. I do not have the odds in front of me, though. I can check the episode from last year, but I did not do that. So apologies. But once again, Fonseca not here this year because he won last year. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the actual outrights. Time to move on into the lock and dog picks for the day one matches of the event. Before we get into the actual day one matches, a reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Novig. So if you want to check out prediction markets, check out Novig, the number one prediction market for sports in America. Get some great prices, reduced juice on a bunch of different markets. Also, download the app. When you do so, get a nice deal with us. Get $50 and you spend just $5 if you use our code SGPN. Then actually Novig, promo code SGPN. We're all supported by Rhythm. They've been great in the NFL season so far, especially with props. Also check them out for college basketball and for other sports. They have WNBA. They have golf. So make sure you check out, once again, Rhythm. Check out college basketball. They have a bunch of options for models. They give you predictions. Also, make sure you can build your own model and check out the house models as well. So a lot of options if you want to get into the model building sphere of sports betting. So once again, check that out. And a reminder that if you want to actually check out Rhythm for yourself. You can get a nice discount for the first month if you use the code SGPN25. When you download the app, you'll get a nice quarter off the first month. Download Rhythm. Once again, promo code SGPN25 for a quarter off your first month. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the preview of the Next Gen Finals in Jeddah. Time to move on into the lock and dog picks. For the lock, we're going to go with the matchup between Landolucci and Bodkov. We're going to go with Landolucci money line at minus 120. This is mainly a head-to-head angle where Landolucci has owned them in the head-to-head. I'm going to point out, though, that I know there's been a layoff, but Bodkov has lost 4 straight matches on hard court, not exactly ending the season in great form. You could argue that he might once again be in better form because he had a month to reset himself. But 4 straight losses, not exactly great form, and I do think that he's not the best hardcore player. He's fine, but I think Landolucci is a bit more comfortable in this environment. I think he'll look better over the course of these 3 out of 5 sets. But Landolucci in his career is 3-0 lifetime against Bodkov. Faced off 1 time on hard court. Most recent meeting was back in late September, and Landolucci won in straight sets. I believe it was 6-4, 6-4, so it was close. But once again, Landolucci is undefeated against this opponent, beat him in straight sets in the only hard court meeting a couple months ago. I think minus 120 is a good price. It might be a marathon, not going to write off a 4 or a 5 setter. But a guy that's 3-0 in the head-to-head, including the only meeting being on hard court, being a straight set win, I think has a pretty cheap price here. So I'll go for, give me Landolucci money line at minus 120 as my lock for the show. For my dog, I'm going to go with a combo play. I'm going to go to the blocks match against Engel. Give me blocks money line with the over 23.5 games at plus 175. A reminder, it is going to be 3 out of 5 format, first to 4 in each set. So 23.5 games does not mean the normal 23.5 games, but Engel is the biggest tournament long shot in the entire field, as he was a last second fill-in for Mensik. However, he has a good serve, has some firepower. I think he can force a couple of tie breaks over the course of this match. Now, once again, if you're looking at what could be a couple breakers, you do need Engel to win at least one set. But I do think he will be able to maybe sneak one out in a breaker. Blocks has also dropped some sets lately. He's lost at least 1 set in 2 straight matches. I think Engel is going to end up losing. I think Blocks is the, I'd say, more complete player. But I do think with a good serve and a good amount of firepower like Engel, I think the fast-paced courts are going to help him out early in this match. And I do think he might be able to steal a set. So if I'm picking Blocks, who's a decent favorite to win the match, he's about minus 180. And I throw in Engel's good serve and maybe his ability to steal a set against the guy that's dropped a set, at least 1 set, in 2 straight. I think you could argue that this is a good combo play to turn a minus 180 favorite into a plus 175 play. I'll go for it. I think Blocks wins, but I don't see him winning in blowout fashion. I think Engel will show up with some overall respect and some overall, I'd say, willingness to go for broke. And I think that that's going to benefit him early in the match. I think he'll go home with something in this one. I'll go Blocks in 4 as my actual prediction, but I do think that coincides with the over. So I'll go for that as the combo portion of my dog play. So once again, the lock's going to be on Landolucci money line at minus 120 against Bodkov. For the dog, I'm going to go with Blocks money line with the over 23.5 games in the match at plus 175. So we'll wrap it up for the show. Now, for the actual event in itself, I really don't like the format. So I'll probably be back for the semis. So I'm not going to be back for a couple days, but I will be back at some point for another episode in this event. Till next